Welcome to the Undisputed Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Taft. This podcast is the full show from today's episode of Undisputed from start to finish. They've got a busy slate, so Skip, Shannon, let's get to it.
Good morning. Welcome to Undisputed. I'm Jenny Taft with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing great, Skip. We're a couple of weeks late with the lot opening up because our guy Horace Grant had a lot to say yesterday.
Yeah, that's true. You know, for me, I'm just so happy this last dance is finally over and we can quit talking about how obviously Michael Jordan is so much better than LeBron ever dreamed of being. I'm glad about that.
It's only obvious in a handful of people's eyes, yours and a few of those Jordan fans. So, but other than that, This thing is still up for debate in some people's eyes. Not mine, because I already know GOAT James got this thing.
Of course. All right. Well, as much as we have all enjoyed The Last Dance, not everyone is so happy with what they've seen, including a former teammate, Horace Grant. And remember, he reached out to us, to Shannon Sharp, directly last week, and now he has so much more to say. Grant refuted Michael Jordan's claim that he was the locker room source for Sam Smith's famous book, The Jordan Rules. Horace went on to say that if anyone was a snitch, it was Jordan for calling out former teammates for doing hard drugs and partying in his early days in Chicago. So, Shannon, I know you guys did have that conversation, and you said he had plenty to say. So whose side are you on here?
Well, Skip, I think what happened is that this book brought up some memories because if it serves me correctly, Skip, Mike thought at the time that the book came out that the source of a lot of information that Sam Smith had put in his book came from Horace Grant. Well, like a lot of other things, Skip, people had forgotten that. Maybe he said that, but people had forgotten. And then when this documentary comes out, it brings that all back up. I was like, hold on, wait a minute. I wasn't a snitch. I didn't Sam Smith and I were friends then. We're still friends to this day. But Michael played golf with Sam Smith. Michael invited Sam Smith up to his room. How do we know Michael didn't say some of these things? And so it brought up some painful memories from Horace Grant because the one thing, Skip, you don't want to be labeled a snitch. You know, Tekashi 6ix9ine know full well what that snitching title gives you. A lot of people look down upon you for snitching, especially, Skip, if it's things within the team that no one would really knew about, and it's like Horace is giving out family secrets. And Horace is like, I'm pushing back against that. I think Horace isn't the only one, Skip, that doesn't like the way he was portrayed in this documentary. I guarantee you, if you put Scottie Pippen on a lie detector test, Scottie Pippen wouldn't like the way he's betrayed because Horace also said something. Why was the hell that Scottie not going into the game in 1994? Why was that in this documentary? Michael Jordan was not even on the team. So why would you bring that up? You brought up the migraine. You brought up the bad back. You make Scottie looks bad. You talk about he's selfish. And one of the things that I gathered, and that when I talked to him, Skip, is that he's like, Sharp, you know where I'm from. Ain't nobody taking no food off my plate. He said, you can ask anybody on the plane. Yes, he did say that. But I said, F you, and I stepped to him, and he didn't move. And so a lot of things that what he said to me, he relayed in this. And I told him, I said, I don't feel comfortable. Because I called him back again that night, Skip, and I said, what do you feel comfortable with me saying on air tomorrow? He said, hell, I called you. Say everything. And I told him just like this, Skip, and I called you and told you. I said, I don't feel comfortable saying everything that what he said. I would like for him to say that because I don't want something get misinterpreted. Well, I said this and I didn't say that. No, I want it to all come out of your mouth. And I think yesterday he verbalized what he felt, the frustration. And he said it, Skip, if Michael had a problem with me, come to me like a man and let's settle it. Now, we can do that or we can do it another way, however he chooses he wants to do it. But I can tell in him talking yesterday, and I can tell when he spoke to me last week, he was very frustrated with how he was being portrayed. And he was very disappointed. Like he said, Sharp, he is a great, all-time great player. But y'all can miss me with that leadership. And one more thing, Skip, before I turn it over to you. Leadership is not always about trying to get someone else to do something. You know, there are times that Mike would ride a guy on the football team, and I would go to Mike and I would say, Mike, let me take it. I got it from here. He's like, 84, you sure? I said, Mike, let me take it. See, that's also a part of leadership, Skip. Sometimes leadership thinks that you always have to be in the front position. But sometimes leadership comes in the form of, hey, you run interference for something else, and you handle that, and guys appreciate that also. That's all I'm saying. But what Horace was saying, Skip, he was very disappointed in how he was portrayed in this documentary.
Okay, so first up, Horace Grant is welcome on this show as soon as we can get back and get stabilized in studio, as you point out. So I don't want to speak good. I don't want to speak behind his back or out of pocket over here where he doesn't have a chance to respond. I do want everybody to know he did get a chance to respond in the documentary. They did interview him. I'm not sure they asked him some of the questions on some of the more controversial topics that got brought up. But at least Michael Jordan allowed the producers to go find Horace Grant and interview him for the documentary. So you got to give him some credit for that. Now,
Skip, before I go any further, Skip, before you go any further.
All right.
Before you go any further, he said they asked him a lot. He said, but if it was anything negative about Michael, they edited that out. He said there are a lot of people that had speaking parts, but if they didn't speak favorable, it got cut out because Mike had final say.
Okay, and obviously, as you and I made clear from the start, this was a so-called quote-unquote documentary. It's not a documentary, it's an autobiography. It's Michael Jordan signing off on everything that's in there. Let's not mistake it. Let's not try to doctor it up or pretty it up in any way, shape, or form. Michael had final say over every last little thing that went into that quote-unquote documentary. It's just his story in his view through his eyes. That's all it is.
Correct.
And I did think they did do it in many surprisingly objective ways because they dealt with the gambling issue. They dealt with other issues in Michael's life. They dealt with the quote-unquote bullying, as you call it. Michael allowed all of that practice footage that no one had ever seen before that had been archived that showed him quote-unquote bullying, or as I say, motivating other players by harshly getting on them, by ridicule. We saw Scott Burrell. And so the point is, Michael allowed a lot of objective things to get into the documentary. Now, back to Horace Grant. I've always liked him. I've always believed in how he played. He did play hard. He played the right way. He had a very good career. It lasted 17 years. That one year that Michael went to play baseball, Horace Grant made the All-Star team. I take none of that away. He has credibility in my eyes. But what seemed to really set Horace off was an interview that Sam Smith did. I think it was like the first week the doc hit in episodes 1 and 2. Sam Smith did an interview on San Francisco radio. This is just a random San Francisco radio interview in which he brought up the plane food story, where they're flying back on the team plane, and Michael told the flight attendant, don't give him a dinner. He played like, you know what, he doesn't get to eat tonight, which you could see is the way Michael was. Well, that's what stung Horace the deepest to me, because I'm sure he goes on his social media and 6 or 8 people said, how could you allow that man to do that to you, to take food out of your mouth? I'm sure Horace got some food on the plane at some point, and if he didn't, he ate when he got home. But he took that so personally because of where he's from. He's South Carolina, right? I forgot to look this up because he went to Clemson.
He's
I believe he's from South Carolina. South Georgia.
No, he's from Georgia. So he went to Georgia.
Okay, I got
Middle
it.
Georgia.
So the point, yes, you got it. So you guys have sort of similar backgrounds. But the point is that he got his manhood challenge, maybe via Twitter or Instagram, that people are saying, Horace, you let that guy do that to you? So now he's saying that what got left out of that story was he stood up. that he stepped to, that he challenged Michael right then and there on the plane, and he says that Michael was just barking and that he wanted no part of Horace Grant. Horace Grant was 6'10".
16.
He was a thin, he wasn't like sculpted, but he went 215 or 20, I think. I don't know, maybe he put on some more weight later in his career. I don't know. It would have been a good fight, and I'm not sure Michael would have backed down from it. But that's neither here nor there, because now it's gone over the edge into Horace is now saying, if he wants to do it right now, let's do it right now. Let's settle it, man to man. If that's how we have to do it, let's do it this way. Horace also pointed out that they had remained friendly, that Michael had sent him signed shoes for his charities, on and on and on. The other thing I point out to you, Shannon, is Horace Grant still works for the NBA, representing the Chicago Bulls as a global ambassador. Again, before the pandemic, he was traveling the globe to represent the Bulls globally and talk about Michael Jordan. I've seen lots of quotes over the years from Horace Grant about how Michael is obviously the greatest player ever. He's the greatest I ever played with or against, because Horace left when he got his $50 million deal to go to Orlando and obviously played against Jordan in the playoffs. So the point is that I'm now worried for Horace Grant. Is he threatening this job? I don't know how much this job means, because Commissioner Silver is not going to love this from one of his global ambassadors challenging the man that most people think is the GOAT to a fight. Ambassador. If it's going to come to that, let's fight, right? So I'm not sure that's the greatest look right now. But Shannon, let's be real about this. What did we see from Michael Jordan in his Hall of Fame speech? We saw retribution. We saw vendettas. We saw grudges. We saw he just nucleared. He nuked the whole field of people that who had crossed him, all the way back to who cut him in high school, the coach who cut him in high school. When he was a freshman in high school, he got cut from the team. Okay? That's who he is. That's who he always was. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that's the guy. Does he hold a grudge? Yes, he does. Was Scottie Pippen portrayed in The Last Dance in very negative terms? In some instances, yes, he was. Why was that, Shannon Sharp? Because Scottie Pippen has said several times over the last couple of years he believes LeBron will ultimately be better than Michael Jordan. Well, if you say that publicly, you're done, man. You're off the list. Charles Barkley dared to say on TNT that Michael Jordan has not been a very good owner / GM of the Charlotte franchise. He questioned his ability to team build. And what happened? Michael said, that's it. The bridge was burned, and a guy who had been one of his closest friends, and Charles Barkley, is now not invited to the party anymore. He is off the list. So my point to you is, and to Horace, it's just who he always was. So yes, did Michael go too far in The Last Dance? I keep wanting to call it a documentary. It's not a documentary. It's just The Last Dance. But did he go too far about Horace Grant? When Michael just condemned Horace, that was from Horace. The Jordan Rules book all came from Horace. He was the snitch. Okay. Was he a contributor? Yes, he was. Did Sam Smith thank Horace Grant in the acknowledgments in the book for all the time that Horace had given to him? Yes, he did. Well, that right there is that's a flashing red light. That's a warning signal. Look out, because that would lead people to jump to the conclusion that Horace was a big source in that book. I mean, Horace was a big source in the Jordan Rules. So the point was, a lot of people jumped to that conclusion as soon as the book came out. But obviously, Sam Smith covered the team. He basically lived with the team. He got a lot of that from assistant coaches, from Phil Jackson, I believe from Jerry Reinsdorf. Remember, Sam Smith segued in his career. He has worked for the Bulls website. So now he's actually part of the team structure. So he's always been very close with Jerry Krause. Jerry Reinsdorf, because Jerry Krause became a target in the Jordan rules. So he hated it. He called Phil on the carpet about it. But there were lots of players who obviously contributed to the Jordan rules. So in the end, look, Will Perdue had an interesting comment in The Last Dance. Will Perdue said that as soon as they broke through with that first championship, and Horace was there for 91, 92, and 93, that Horace was one of the players who resented Michael because he became so huge. Well, Horace Grant was the 10th overall pick in the draft. Horace Grant was the ACC Player of the Year. So he came with big credentials, and all of a sudden, as Will Perdue said in The Last Dance, he was pushed into the shadows by Michael Jordan. All of a sudden, he was kind of like just along for the ride. He was a nobody. Okay, that sticks in his craw. And I get it, because Jordan became a global icon like overnight. And obviously, once the sneakers caught hold, that was all of that. So the point was, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
But Skip, that's always the point. If you play on a team with a superstar, especially in basketball, you can be a really good player, but you become an afterthought. I mean, people don't realize how good Michael Cooper was. Skip, you remember Jamal Wilkes? That game that Magic went 42 and 15 and 7? Jamal Wilkes had 35 points. That's a footnote.
He did.
Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Tiny Archibald, those were very good players. But you a footnote to Larry Bird's story. Everybody's talking about Bird. He was MVP, 84, 85, 86. He's the last player to win 3 consecutive MVPs. So Horace shouldn't have been mad about that. Skip, when he got there, he understood what Mike was when he got there. He got drafted, if I'm not mistaken, Skip, in 87, because I remember seeing him, Skip. They came to the Civic Centers. Back then, Pizza Hut had an All-American team. He, Muggsy Bogues, I know those two remember those guys vividly because they played close to the Savannah area. And they came. And so I remember seeing Horace Grant. But Michael Jordan was a superstar by the time Horace even got to Chicago. So he shouldn't have been. Can you imagine, Skip? You know if a player's really good. So just think about what Patrick Mahomes is. Skip, he won the MVP, 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. Now he's a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP. Can you imagine what he is throughout the league? Can you imagine what he is now in Kansas City? They have some good players. Tyreek Hill is a good player. Travis Kelce. But they're footnotes now to his story. That's just the way it rolls. And I agree with you, Skip. I think when it came out, and it is like, man, Jordan wouldn't even let Horace Grant eat. Horace, like, bull jive. Ask anybody on that plane. I said, F you, Mike, and I stepped towards him, and he ain't do anything. Because he wasn't about that. He would just bully guys that he thought he could get away with it with. That's what he said, Skip. And Horace verbalized that on the radio yesterday.
Okay, and Horace is making the point that a lot of players in those intense practices where Michael would get on players so hard or after practice, that they all fought back, so to speak, that they all defended themselves. Obviously, Steve Kerr started the fight that Michael finished. I don't know what happened in the Will Perdue fight, but again, Horace is saying that too much got edited out, that a lot of players went back at Michael. Okay?
Correct.
This is where you and I part ways. That's what he wanted. He was trying to get a rise out of them. He was trying to get their pride up where they would fight for themselves. They would feel better about themselves, that he was trying to toughen them up for big playoff moments. I think it worked because it went 6-0 in the finals. So I think all of his motivating worked. It wasn't always pretty. I told you before we even start all this, he could be ruthless, he could be heartless, he could be merciless, and he was relentless. But in the end, it did work in its own ugly sort of way. So Horace knows it worked because they won together 3 straight championships. And if Horace had stayed, they'd kept winning championships. And I still don't believe anybody hates Michael Jordan now because everybody sat for the documentary who mattered. And in the end, we heard back from Scott Burrell saying, I needed that, and I still stay in touch with Michael, and I believe he still loves me, and I still love him. Okay, so now Horace is bent completely out of shape. He's off the list, and I think he needs to let this go at some point pretty soon because I think he's starting to look bad now.
He had let it go, and then it came back up almost over 2 decades later. Skip, the thing is that I will also say, be it Charles Barkley, Scottie Pippen, whomever else, if Michael Jordan has stopped speaking to you because of your opinion, you really need to question the depth of your friendship to begin with. Because as my brothers should say, people might not need you, but they'll damn sure use you. So Skip,
yeah.
I'm not going to get mad if Ray says I'm not the best tight end he's ever faced. I'm not going to get mad if someone says that. But seemingly Michael, if you say anything, Skip, he even brought the guy to his Hall of Fame speech that made the team over him. Skip, he didn't cut Michael. He had nothing to do with it. Maybe the coach at that time thought he was better than Michael, but Michael brought him publicly and shamed him. So all I'm saying is be it Scotty or Charles Barkley, you really need to question the depth of your friendship with Michael to begin with, because you formulating an opinion, someone asking you, and Scotty said, I believe over time, LeBron would be a better or is a better player than Michael. You can't get mad at that. That's his opinion. Just like if somebody asks you, who is your toughest opponent? If you say Larry Bird, Magic, Kareem, and others can't get mad. If you say this Isaiah, others can't get mad. But it seems to me, if Michael Jordan is not at the forefront, he's going to get mad at anybody that doesn't say he's the best at everything. So I just think, Skip, Horace, like you said, after 2 decades, he thought this was dead. The Last Dance brought something back fresh in Horace Grant's memory. And he's like, nah, I don't want that to be portrayed like that again. So let me squash this now. Now, I don't know if it's over or not. Hopefully it is until he comes back on our show, and then he can sit across from you and I can ask him some of the things, so even more in depth than what was talked about in The Last Dance.
Okay, I'm game. So then Horace also accused Michael of being a snitch in The Last Dance, because Michael brought up in one of the early episodes that as a rookie, he walked into a veteran's room and there's cocaine and women and blah, blah, blah. And he was shocked about it because he was a little naive at that point, having stayed in college at Carolina for 3 years. So the point was, Michael was trying to say, man, I didn't know anything. I don't think he was trying to snitch on anybody. He did not name names. And Shannon, it's not like Michael tried to hide all of his cigar smoking. It became almost part of him. And as he did the interviews, he definitely didn't hide the fact that he had a little something, something over there in that glass sitting next to him. So I guess he sort of found the ways of the older people's world, right? Once he joined the NBA, he found cigars, he found alcohol, obviously, and he made no pretense of that. So I don't think that qualified as snitching.
Well, Horace says, look, if somebody asks you something about what transpired as far as illegal activities or drugs of that nature, just say no comment. I didn't see anything, even though you did walk in on that. So that's what he was saying. It's like, look, you put some guys because they can do reasoning. Now you caught everybody that was on that roster at that time, Skip, that's a veteran. Now they're like, was that you? Was that you that Michael Jordan walked in there in the room with those girls in that Coke? So he brought unwanted attention to guys that really didn't have to have that attention brought on them.
I look forward to the day where we can have Horace join us on the show and get his take. But until then, we're going to leave it for now, guys. No mercy. Well, last season, Jameis Winston had more deep completions, passes of 20-plus yards, than any other QB in the league. Tom Brady was the 12th best in that category. So, Shannon, this begs the question, With Brady now the starter in Tampa, will Bruce Arians' offense be a good or bad thing for Tom Brady?
Skip, on one hand, it looks like a good fit for the simple fact you look at all the weapons. Godwin, Mike Evans, O.J. Howard, now he signed Gronk, Cameron Brate. They took a running back, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Skip, in the second or third round, drafted an offensive lineman with the 10th pick in the draft. Well, high in the draft. So it looks like a good fit because of the weapons. But when you delve inside of it, it's really not a good fit because in that offense, Skip, it's all about pushing the ball down the field. And you know this, when you push the ball down the field, you subject yourself to more turnovers. This is why Jameis made some horrible mistakes. All of those turnovers weren't on long passes. He had some horrible reads, Skip, on some underneath stuff, and even on the deep balls, he threw into traffic a lot. But this is what this offense requires you to do. Skip, for the most part, Tom Brady's 20-year career, except with that 3-year span, in 1 year, remember, Skip, he only played one game with Randy. If I'm not mistaken, Skip, in 2008, he only played one game. He got hurt early in that game. And so basically it was 7 and 9 in which he played with Randy Moss. That was really the only time the Patriots offense was deep strike, push the ball down the field because you had Randy Moss. Other than that, Tom Brady has been very risk averse. This is why his running backs catch so many passes. That's why the screen game is so good for them. It's something that they really work on. And if you think about it, you're going to have to ask Tom Brady to retrain what he's been trained to do, which is risk aversion. That means you're going to have to stand in the pocket a little longer. You're going to have to allow guys to get a little closer to you, and you're going to have to push the ball down the field. And you're going to have to trust Godwin. You're going to have to trust Godwin and Mike Evans, that they're going to make plays. And either they're going to make the play or they're going to break the play up, and the defense is not going to make a play. All right, so, Skip, it looks great because you look at the weapons, and Brady as a whole maybe not have ever had offensive weapons like this at one particular time. Now, Skip, we know what Gronk represented. We know Wes Welker, what he represented, and with Randy Moss. But when you combine all this, I don't know if you've ever had this, but when you really, really look at it, Skip, Tom Brady's going to be asked to stand in the pocket, take 7-step drops, hold the ball, and push it down the field. So they're going to be asking Tom Brady to do things in which he hasn't done in a very long time. Whether or not it's going to work, we're going to have to see. But it's asking him to do something that he really hasn't done, or I don't know if he's really comfortable doing, especially at the age of 43. Skip, licks hurt a little more as we start to age. Trust me.
Trust me. So, back to your premise that Tom Brady at 43 might not have the arm or the guts or the durability to be able to take an offense in which go routes are called every other play. I believe that whole narrative is fallacious. I believe it's just, as Bruce Arians said, flat out wrong. Arians said a couple days after they were able to sign Tom Brady that I think the perception is just wrong. I thought his deep ball was outstanding last year. And Shannon, I got to tell you, the stats back that up. Would you believe that Tom Brady threw 7 touchdown passes of 20 or more yards last year? That was his most since 2006. And back to Jameis, who was in that bombs away offense last year and put up absurd numbers, great and bad. Jameis was number 1 in tight window completions of 20 or more yards. Guess who was tied for first with Jameis for tight window completions of more than 20 yards? Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. That guy did that last year with nobody to throw to in New England. Tom Brady tied Jameis for the most guarded deep ball throws in the league. And by the way, as Pro Football Focus pointed out in grading Brady from last year, his passing suffered for lack of quality receivers in 2019. Brady's numbers were solid with nobody getting open on a consistent basis. I told you Pro Football Focus graded the Patriots receivers as dead last in separation, in being able to get free from a DB or a linebacker or anybody covering them. So to me, it's just erroneous to think Tom Brady can't stand up to this offense. And by the way, Bruce Arians knows how it works, because he went on to say that we do have some reads that start deep and come back short. But I've had a couple of quarterbacks, one of them obviously being Jameis, that just kept looking deep and wouldn't throw the check down. And he loves, Bruce Arians, what Tom Moore, his great advisor who coached Peyton Manning in his early years in Indy, Tom Moore's always said that nobody ever went broke putting money in the bank. Well, they didn't, because it's check downs. If somebody's open short, just dump it to them. So now Tom Brady goes to an offense that has obviously the prince of midair in Evans, Mike Evans, who's 6 feet 5 inches tall. And Pro Football Focus ranked Chris Godwin last year the #1 receiver in football. So now you've got those two on the outside. You added Gronk, who has the best rapport of anybody, I think even beyond Edelman, that Brady threw to in New England. And you also have O.J. Howard, who's an untapped resource. He still hasn't figured out how to play. He's 6'5", and he ran 4.5 at the combine. My goodness. What do you think's going to happen? Greatness is going to happen, because there's nothing wrong with Brady's arm. They had another workout yesterday. They said they probably had 10 or 12 in Tampa. Hope they're social distancing. But they say his arm looks as good as ever. It looks live. So to me, I don't see that this whole storyline that he can't stand up to the offense. Yeah, he can. And sometimes he's going to throw some short balls that are going to be run after catch balls.
Yeah, Skip, I believe that. But well, if that's where it came off, Skip, that's not what I meant. I'm not saying Tom Brady can't. I'm saying Tom Brady's going to be asked to throw the ball down the field more than at any point in time in his career. This is the offense. And yes, Skip, in every offense, you throw the ball deep occasionally. But nobody asked their quarterback to throw the ball deep more than what Tampa asked Jameis to do. And when you do that, Skip, you allow the defense to get closer. Tom has done a great job, Skip. You remember when I think it was Joey Bosa that was mic'd up in that divisional game. And he's like, man, I can't get there, because Tom was just throwing the ball. He was getting the ball out of his hands so quick. Well, that's not Tampa's offense. Tampa is about pushing the ball down the field. It's about getting those big plays. It's about getting those plays, as John Gruden used to say, that gut you. You know, the screen pass, yeah, it's frustrating, Skip. The little swing, a little shallow, yeah. But there's nothing gets the crowd in the game like a 50, 60-yard touchdown pass. And that's what Bruce Arians' offense is predicated on. And this is why normally in their first year, their quarterback, with the exception of Big Ben, Skip, remember, Big Ben, when he got Big Ben, the Steelers were a Jerome Bettis, Willie Parker, run the football, play defense, Ben, we're going to let you throw it on third down. Well, all the other quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, Skip, he led the league in interception, but they put everything on Peyton's plate. You look at Carson Palmer, they put everything on his plate when he had him in Arizona. So Andrew Luck, Skip, we know Andrew Luck was a turnover machine, because you got to hold the ball, you take a lot of blows, but you also get an opportunity to reap the reward. And so, Skip, as you mentioned, like you never lose money putting money in the bank. Well, and if you want big money, you got to invest in riskier stocks. You know, people that really made it big, Skip, they invested in Google. They invested in Apple. They invested in those stocks. Like, I don't know about this. Man, you mean to tell me the internet's going to be big in 2000 and in 2010 and people going to really need a search engine? Nah, I don't know about that. Those guys made more money than putting their money in Wells Fargo and Wachovia. Well, Wells Fargo bought Wachovia, but you know what I mean, Skip. You know, you're getting 3% of your money as opposed to investing in riskier stocks and getting 15, 20. Risk reward. So there's a huge reward on the end of that, but there's a ton of risk in that style of play also. That's what I'm saying, Skip. Yes, I believe Tom can throw the ball down the field, but are you going to ask him to do that like you asked Jameis, on the amount of times that you asked Jameis, and can he stand in there? Jameis took some blows, Skip. You know, to push the ball down the field, you got to take a few to the chops.
Okay? So here's what stunned me about the Pro Football Focus ranking of the deep throwers from last year. Jameis led across the board in 5 categories. But Jameis fell all the way down to 12th in the rank. Is it 12th or 13th? 12th, I believe it was. But Jameis fell way down the list because he was so bad with the turnovers. He had so many negative statistics that undercut the positive.
Yes.
So, Shannon, he turned it over 35 times last year, 30 interceptions, 5 lost fumbles. Tom Brady turned it over 9 times with a bad offense in New England, 8 interceptions and 1 lost fumble. Okay, 35 down to 9. What if Brady just turns it over a dozen times? What if you cut it down by 23 turnovers? It's so much better that your offense is going to be twice as good. It'll be twice as effective. And you brought this up, and I know some of the Tampa reporters have already written about this and talked about it on ESPN. Brady is the master of the screen pass. I don't think anybody has ever set up and thrown the screen any better than Tom Brady. For whatever reason, Jameis couldn't get a hold of throwing screen passes. It was not his forte. He didn't have the feel or the touch for the short ball. He could really throw the deep ball, especially if you gave him just one more second in the pocket. He could kill you with the deep ball, but he didn't throw the screen. So they abandoned the screen. Watch Tom Brady. I kept telling you, my little man from Vanderbilt, Keyshawn Vaughn, they stole him in the 3rd round. He can flat out ball. He can catch it out of the backfield. He's short and stout and quick and hard to get on the ground. Well, watch what he does with screen passes next year. That's a whole nother part of the repertoire that Bruce Arians and Tom Moore have at their fingertips. And in the end, Shannon, they know this is the GOAT, man. They're going to welcome and honor his input into their offense. Absolutely. So you're going to see a blend of Brady and Arians. Brady and Arians. He does this. They like to do this. The twain shall meet. And obviously in 2007, Tom Brady threw 50 touchdown passes, a lot of them to Randy Moss. They broke all the records. So it's not like he's never done this before. He would love to do this if it works. But what he loves more than records are Super Bowls. So I think it's an all-time great fit. I think it's the perfect place for Tom Brady to end his career in Tampa with Bruce Arians. And again, I don't have any trepidation about Tom's ability to throw the deep ball if he's protected. And now they're going to have to protect him and give him the 7-step drop kind of time that you need to throw home runs.
Skip, the screen game is really tied to your feet. And guys, really, you have to have good feet because, Skip, you got to fake one way. A lot of times you fake one way, gather your feet, and throw the ball back the other way. And I'm not so sure that Jameis had the best feet. Now, he was good at dropping. I think he had slow feet. And I think he does a great job of dropping back, throwing the ball down the field. But, Skip, if you look at guys that are good at the screen game, you watch their feet, and you watch how fast their feet. They'll take it, they'll fake one way, and now I got to reset my body and throw the ball up the other way. Now, Tom Brady was great at that because you know why, Skip? That was a part of their offense. It was something that he knew he had to get good at because that was such a big, valuable asset in their game plan. So he became very proficient. Skip, you got to work on screens. I mean, we were okay when I was playing, Skip. We were okay, but we were basically a toss, handoff, strong, weak team and push the ball down the field. We weren't as great as we probably should have been. Now, we kept trying to put it in the game plan, but we didn't have the success that, say, as Steve Young had with the 49ers. Or Brett ran the screen game really well, Skip. But you look at guys' feet when they run the screen game, and it'll tell you how successful they're going to be. So you're right. I believe they'll have a measure as well as they should, Skip. The quarterback should be heavily involved because just because you like something, you stand on the sideline calling the plays. I'm out here. I know what's working, and I know what I believe that will work best. So I do believe that they'll come together, and it will be a mix. But at the end of the day, Skip, they're going to push the ball down the field, Skip, I believe, a lot more than what Tom Brady is used to.
Good.
No mercy.
LeBron James responded to a tweet that said LeBron viewed Michael Jordan as a teammate instead of an adversary. LeBron replied that he never said that. He simply answered the question of whether he thought he could have been a teammate to complement Jordan's game. LeBron also said he would have wanted to compete against MJ every single day. He thanked him for being such an inspiration, a superhero. How about those emojis at the end? LeBron loves his emojis. Shannon, was LeBron's comment about wanting to play with Jordan unfairly taken out of context?
Of course it was. Skip, on Uninterrupted, Paul Rivera asked a question. Knowing what we know about Mike, his commitment to winning, his leadership style, would you have loved to play with Mike and be a teammate of Mike? That was the question. Man, I think my style would have blended perfectly. Mike being the killer assassin that he is, the scorer that he is, my ability to pass the ball like I can pass the ball, man, that thing would have been Scottie Pippen on steroids, Scottie Pippen 2.0. Now that's what he says. The media gets it. LeBron James says he views Michael as a teammate, not as an adversary. What the hell? Skip, and remember, people are, and LeBron is going to have to understand this. People are going to be quick because anything you say is going to get misconstrued. Skip, when I went to the Pro Bowl and I had Marino and I had Montana and I had Warren Moon. Skip, I was very conscious of what I was going to say when people asked me, reporters, I got back to Denver, what do you think about Marino's ability to throw the ball and Warren Moon and Jim Kelly? Oh, man, they're good. But, man, give me number 7. Because anytime if I would have heaped praise on those guys, are you saying they're better than 7? Are you saying that you'd rather play with them than Elway? So, Skip, I was always very mindful, very conscious of that. And so LeBron saying that, yes, I could have saw myself playing with him. They automatically assume, well, he's scared of Mike. He want to be Mike's teammate. He don't want to compete against Mike. All the greats, Skip, I mean, that's, Skip, the reason why they love the Dream Team so much. They believe they had the greatest collection of talent, and they got an opportunity to see what it would be like if they actually played together. That's what made it so fun. You had Barkley, you had Malone on the same side. You had Ewing, you had Robinson, and they were also playing with Jordan, Pippen, Magic, and Bird. Skip, that's what made it so unique. You got an opportunity to see. But now, but they're quick. Because now if you say LeBron views Mike as a teammate as opposed to an adversary, now you automatically put LeBron below Michael Jordan because he doesn't want to compete. And he never said that. LeBron has really gone out of his way to show great deference to the previous great, Skip. He's always praised Magic, Larry, Mike, Kareem, all the greats. He has no problem handing out bouquets, even to guys that he plays. Yeah, I want to play with Kawhi. Yeah, I want to play with AD. Ask me again. Do I want to play with AD? Yep. When I play with this guy? Yep. So he's always done that, but people take that by saying, yes, I would like to play with those guys, as he's afraid to play against those guys. And I believe this was a situation in which that happened. Yes, I could play with Mike. Oh, you don't want to play against him, huh? Okay.
Before I answer everything you just stated, allow me to say, because I do know Brian Windhorst, whose tweet LeBron responded to, I was very surprised LeBron sort of slapped the wrist of Brian Windhorst. Brian has covered LeBron since he was in middle school. Again, Brian is a tremendous reporter, and he can be very objective about LeBron, but he also loves LeBron. And this came off as biting the hand that has always fed you, because Brian will be the first to step up and defend LeBron against Michael. Again, Brian Windhorst believes that LeBron is the greatest player ever. And he said that many times over the last 3-4 weeks on ESPN during The Last Dance. So it shocked me that all of a sudden LeBron would rise up and say, bam, to Windy, as we call him. You do that to him. Yeah. You'd slap him. Not only did you slap him on the wrist, you kind of just slapped him right across the face. No, you can't do that to me. Okay, now, to answer this question, to start with, Shannon Sharp, I'm going to use your favorite line against you. Two things can be true. Two things can be true. How many times have you said that? Okay, in this case, two things were true. Number one, you're right. when asked about playing against Michael Jordan, yes, LeBron said, I would love to have played against him. And he went on and on. I'd love to have played against Magic and Bird and all the rest. You're right. I give you that.
Right.
But when he was handed the softball question of how would it have been, however you want to phrase it, to play with him, it was clear to me that LeBron has thought about what it would be like, because he went into a soliloquy about how great it would have been to play with him, because, as I told you yesterday, that's the first time I've completely agreed with what LeBron assessed, which was my game would have fit perfectly with his. He was an assassin. Yes, he was. Cold-blooded killer. Attack, score. And LeBron, obviously, his nature, he was born passing the basketball. He's still the best passer in basketball. His nature is to pass first, even though he's obviously one of the great all-time scorers of the basketball. He's an even better passer. So his nature would blend beautifully with Michael's, because he would want to facilitate and help Michael do what he does greatest. Okay? So he went on and on to the point that he brought up that Scottie Pippen was one of his favorite players growing up in Akron.
Right.
He saw himself as Scottie because Scottie was also a point forward, a 6'7" passer who could help facilitate number 23, the original 23.
Right.
So he identifies with Scottie, and then I told you about the quote in Rick Bucher's piece in Bleacher Report about where one of the unnamed executives had said, LeBron would have been Scottie on steroids. Well, he would have been.
Right.
He would have been the greatest Robin in the history of basketball. And to me, I told you yesterday, the mere fact that LeBron would acknowledge this and display a depth of passion, emotion, and sort of command of this topic that he had thought about it disqualifies him from the GOAT debate, because he's saying, that would have been great. Well, if we do the flip side, if we reverse roles here, there's no way Michael Jordan would ever acknowledge publicly or even privately that he would want to play with LeBron James. The truth was, Michael didn't want to play with anybody. He barely tolerated Scottie and Rodman and Kukoc and all the rest, those spare parts, Steve Kerr and Judd Buechler, all of them. He knew that the rules forced him to have four other guys on the court. I think he wanted to go out by himself. The one area I give Phil Jackson credit for was it was sort of like Gladys Knight and the Pips. It was basically Michael and the Pips, as in Pippen and the rest, until Phil finally got it through Michael's head. You have to utilize your teammates to win championships. It requires 5. You need little contributions from 4 other people to get you to the biggest prize, which is to be able to cradle that trophy and cry over it. He finally figured that out, the Larry O'Brien in 1991. So the point is that Michael, the only quotes I've ever seen from Michael Jeffrey Jordan about LeBron were in the 2015 ESPN The Magazine piece, in which he acknowledged that he was thinking about how to stop LeBron. He had watched him carefully via TV, and he had decided that when LeBron goes left, he likes to mostly pull up. When he goes right, he wants to freight train, and he's going to attack the basket more when he goes right. And Michael's saying he's so much bigger than I am, 6'6" versus 6'9", 215-ish versus 260, that Michael said, I can't let him get to the right hand, so I'm going to make him go left all night long. But it was all in the context of, that's how I'm going to shut him down. And obviously, Michael was a Defensive Player of the Year, first team all-defense 9 times. So that was 50% of his game was shutting you down, as well as shutting you up on the offensive end when he would just score on you like crazy. So to me, in the end, LeBron showed you who he was. He does have a lot of robbing in him. And I think if Michael had LeBron as a young player, yeah, LeBron would have deferred like crazy to Michael because he grew up idolizing him. So in the end, when we talk about killer will, psycho drive, it's who Jordan was that LeBron isn't quite. It doesn't mean that LeBron isn't one of the all-time greats, because he is. But when we talk about, could you be his Robin? And LeBron says, absolutely, I would have been the greatest Robin ever. You're disqualified. You're showing us who you really are. You're not that guy. You're not the all-time alpha male that Michael Jordan was.
Skip, we got to be careful. Just because Michael Jordan wouldn't say something, that's not the end-all, be-all. After this documentary, well, if you don't ride your coworkers and try to be the best salesman, if you don't ride your coworkers and try to do this, well, you're not trying to win, because that's the way Michael did it. Skip, stop this. There's more than one way to win. Michael has convinced people that the only way to win is his way. Well, if you look at those Celtic teams in the 50s and 60s, they won 11, 10, 8. Nobody was like this. Okay, Magic didn't win 6, but he won 5. Kareem won 6 and got 6 MVPs. And he wasn't fighting and kicking everybody and trying to bully people. Skip, there's more than one way, and pardon me for saying this to skin a cat, that's just a phrase. I don't mean that literally. I mean that in a...
I don't even know what it means, you know what I'm saying, Skip? I get it. Yep.
Yeah. So this notion of that, well, Michael would have never done that. We got to stop that, Skip. Stop saying because he wouldn't do it, it was wrong for somebody else to do it that way. That's not the case. He was asked a question, and then automatically people deduced, well, he wanted to play with Mike and not compete against him. That wasn't the question. Skip, look, I was very fortunate. I got an opportunity to play with Ray Lewis. I got an opportunity to play against Ray Lewis. I also played against Mike Singletary, 2 of the best middle linebackers to ever play the game. Well, yeah, it was fun playing with Ray. Played with him for 2 years and saw him and got an opportunity to see up close what he became. But it was damn fun to compete against him, too, and to try to beat him. And the same thing with Singletary. That's just the way it is, Skip. If you're a great player, sure, you want to test your skills against the best. But knowing that, hey, if we don't score 20 points today, we can still win this game because y'all not going to score any, or we can just score 10 and we going to win the ball game. That was a great luxury to have also, Skip. So let's not, every time LeBron says something, try to parse his words to try to make him look weak.
I'm not parsing. He spilled. He went on and on and on. It wasn't just one sentence that was kind of cryptic or hazy or maybe not.
Yes.
He gushed.
Yes.
He gushed. So in the end, I think he realized, I just opened a door that some people are going to run through. Probably that guy on Undisputed. Yeah, I did. And he
now
said, And so he said, Wendy, you can't do that to me.
Skip, and now that lends even more credibility to guys in this era not being able to play with Mike and his style not working. Because why? They're not going to want to play second fiddle to Michael Jordan. You see? You see what I'm talking about now? You just put it out there crystal clear. Michael Jordan's style wouldn't work today. You know why? Because these guys want to be entities of themselves. They don't want to play second fiddle to Michael Jordan. Thank you for clarifying that, because you wanted to make it seem that Michael Jordan's style would work in any era, and you just verbalized that it wouldn't, because guys now want to be that in and of themselves. Thank you, Skip.
No mercy. Well, Dak Prescott ranked 4th overall in deep passing performance last season, according to Pro Football Focus. And with the addition of CeeDee Lamb, Pro Football Focus said Dak could appear even higher this coming season. So, Shannon, are you surprised?
I was a little surprised, but Michael Gallup was a very good deep threat for Dak Prescott last year. Dak did push the ball down the field. Skip, he got the name Dink and Dak because if you look at his first 2 years, Skip, he was 22nd. And then he went from 22nd and 16, 17 to 19th and 18 to 3rd. And that's why Dak wanted his money. Dak said, I've been improving. And y'all trying to give me 2016 and 2017 money. I need 2021 and beyond type money. So, Skip, I was a little surprised because, you know, when you look at it, you don't think, because they fell behind so much. And what teams were doing they were preventing them from getting the big chunk plays. Let them nickel and dime, and that's why at the end of the game, you see Dak have like 25, 30 completions with 400 yards. It was because they were behind and people was giving you all that underneath things. But I guess when you look down, when you break it all the way, his first 3 games, he was pushing the ball down the field. Michael Gallup had over 1,100 yards. So somebody had to get down the field. So when you look at it, Skip, he's improved. Dak has improved every year. Now, Skip, that might not always go to the record, because a lot of times we can see improvement, but the record is not indicative of the improvement that a player has made. Sometimes a record is better, but the player doesn't improve. Dak has gotten better every year from his rookie year to his end of his last year. We know that. And so when you look at this stat, Skip, he's 4th in deep passing performance. That's a huge stat, and that's one of the things that he and Todd Francis sliding on over there to Stephen and Jerry Jones. Take a look at that, fellas.
On your final point, I much agree with you. To my chagrin, I'm dreading that. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. I also agree with you. I was a little surprised by this. I know he throws the deep ball pretty well, but his stats ranked him 4th last year. And by the way, that's 5 notches above Patrick Mahomes down at 9th. Carson Wentz is 10th. Aaron Rodgers, 11th. That's pretty great. So I have 2 requests. I told you the other day, you can no longer ever wear your goat mask again except on Halloween, because it's over. Obviously, Jordan is now conclusively proven to be better than LeBron James. So you can wear your goat mask on Halloween, or if you go back to South Georgia to visit the farm that you grew up on. Other than that, now we get to the nickname that you hung on my guy Dak Prescott back in 2016, Dink and Dak. It's a clever nickname, but it no longer works. It is defunct. It is obsolete. It is officially retired because he ranked 4th in the whole league in deep throwing. Okay, now to the line Jenny touched on as she opened this topic up, Pro Football Focus said, with CeeDee Lamb added to the mix this year, Dak Prescott could appear even higher on this list come next season. Yeah, he could. Amari Cooper is still one of the best deep threats in pro football, especially at home, not so much away. As you point out, and you were really the first to market with this, Michael Gallup is emerging as one of the top deep threats in football. And I told you before the draft, CeeDee Lamb is that guy. And he fell into the Cowboys' lap at 17. And I told you the next day, he's going to change life in Dallas. He will emerge ultimately as the best deep threat of the Cowboy receivers, even beyond Amari and Michael Gallup. Now you've got triple jeopardy for defensive coordinators. And don't forget, you still got to account for that 21 lined up back there at running back, who can also catch it on swing passes out of the backfield. And Blake Jarwin would be a much better deep threat tight end, a get-open tight end, than obviously Jason Witten was in his dotage last year, in his last year with the Cowboys. So, to your point, now we've seen in recent weeks 4th in deep passing, as high as 3rd in MVP odds in the Caesars Sportsbook, and 3rd in Roto World rankings of fantasy projections for next year. 4th, 3rd, 3rd. Well, now to your final point, Todd France, the new agent for Dak Prescott, is going to say, Jerry, I've got numbers here that are saying we're looking at a top 5 quarterback next year. Yep. We need our money. And yet, I'm still back to my premise. The reason Dak is being heralded as Dak Prescott, the reason he's getting all this acclaim is because of his weapons. CeeDee Lamb is going to be the greatest thing that ever happened to Dak, and I thought Amari was a year and a half ago. Amari did change Dak's life. Michael Gallup is starting to change it. Yeah, CeeDee Lamb will change it. He came in with Zeke, who was the 4th overall pick. That's a pretty sweet deal. And if you look at the offensive line, I know it underachieved last year. And I realize they lost their perennial Pro Bowl center, Travis Fredericks. I got that.
Right.
But if you look across that line, there's still nobody who has turned 30 years of age. So Ty Smith is still 29. Zach Martin is still 29. Obviously, Connor Williams, the left guard, I'm not real high on him, but he's still just a baby, out of the University of Texas, a second-round pick in his 3rd year. Mm-hmm. And then Connor McGovern, 2 years ago, a 3rd-round pick out of Penn State, looks like he might be the starting center. So, again, Lyle Collins is still just 27 years of age. They're not over the hill. It's an offensive line that is still going to be top 5 next year. Maybe they'll overachieve next year. Maybe it'll be a new dawn. Maybe they'll have a new vibe to them, something to prove. My point is, Dak Prescott is in what we say. We can't explain what it means. He's in the catbird seat next year. There's different ways to skin the cat, and then there's the catbird seat. I don't know what it means, but we know what it will amount to. Dak is in primo position with the weapons, the offensive line, and Mike McCarthy, I think, is really good at overseeing an offense. Obviously, Kellen Moore is still going to be the play caller, but this is going to be Mike McCarthy's offense. He obviously coached Joe Montana and Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and Dak will benefit from Mike McCarthy. So my point is, when it comes to the negotiation that we keep arm wrestling over, that in the end, it's time for Dak to wake up, smell the roses around him, and say, I got to compromise a little bit because I'm in a really good spot here. I do have 12 national TV commercials because I'm the quarterback of America's team, and I do have weaponry and protection that could make our offense, I don't know, could it be as explosive as Mahomes? It could be. Could it be as explosive as what Brady and Arians are going to put on the field in Tampa? It could be. Could it be as explosive as Lamar's offense? Yes, it could be. Shannon, you have to say, thank you, football gods, for what you gave me. And with the deal on the table, 36-ish million a year, maybe 110 million guaranteed, it's still very fair market value money for the situation you're in. You have to make it work. You need to get to the virtual OTAs and to training camp. You need to settle with Jerry Jones. You need to come to the middle of the table and compromise and get this done so you can focus on winning a championship next year.
I'm focusing on that. I'm focusing on winning the championship and getting my money. What part about no didn't you understand? The big N or the big O? No, because guess what, Skip? There is more stats still coming out that paints me in a favorable position. This had me at four. This had me fourth, Skip, in deep throw? No, third in deep throws. Man, that's good. What? So what about another stat that come out and say Dak on third down was like number 1 or number 2? No. We still got stats. They're still calculating stats that's going to come out that's going to paint me in a favorable position. Skip, you know how nicknames go. You get to keep them. My sister's about to be 60 years old. She's Libby or Buck. She's never going to be able to get called by her real name, Shara Sharp. That's never going to happen. Check down Alex Smith. Skip, he can come back. Skip, he can come back and throw 15 touchdowns of 50 yards or more. He's going to be forever known as Check Down Alex. You know, once you get a nickname and people start referring to you as that nickname, you're not living that down. You're not going to live it.
Time out.
Anthony McFarland.
I need to know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, wait a second. How do you spell Shera? Is it S-H-E-R-A?
S-H-E-R-R-A. Shera.
Okay, so the siblings were then named Sterling, Shannon, and Sharon. I like that. It's got a ring to it. It's a good name.
Yeah, all of and my sister has the middle name. My brother and I, we do not have middle names. So we were the handful of people who do not have middle names. Sterling Sharp, Shannon Sharp. But Skip, you know how this works. You know once you get a nickname, they started calling you Skip. Nobody ever referred to you by your government name. Now this is your government name.
Never.
But you were Skip. No. So no matter what, you're Skip now. So you can't, no matter what you do, you're Skip.
Okay, but it wasn't a nickname. It was actually, weirdly, the name that my father called my mother while they were courting or dating or whatever you want to call it, because I was the firstborn.
Right.
He always called her, you're the skipper of the ship. You know, whatever you say, we do, because you're the one in control here. And my mother was in control, believe me. But the point was, they named me after my father, John Edward, on the birth certificate. But the moment I was born, they started calling me their little skipper. You know, like it was the same nickname for my mom, weirdly, and it went right to me. So not one day of my life was I ever called John or John Edward. I didn't even know what that meant until I went to school and the teacher calls roll and says, John Edward, you know. I don't even know who, I don't even answer. I don't even know that that's my name. So again, it wasn't really a nickname, it was my name. It wasn't a derisive nickname like Dink and Dak, or it wasn't a phony, it wasn't a phony nickname like GOAT for LeBron, a fallacious nickname, one that does not apply. So now we have to retire those two because both of them have been rendered officially defunct. Thank you.
I mean, but it has such a nice ring. Dink and Dak. Doesn't that have a nice check down Alex?
It's
it's just something about it. It just
I like it.
Yeah.
Right.
But unfortunately,
it can go up on the wall behind you somewhere. You know, it can go, it's one of your memorabilia, and you hang on to all of your memorabilia. But now it's history.
I can't let it go.
I feel like Skip, you know, I can't imagine you as any other person. Skip Bayless has worked out just fine for you. I feel like that was a good decision.
No mercy.
We might see Jalen Hurts on the field quite a bit for the Eagles this season. Doug Peterson said they are exploring getting the rookie QB involved in the offense. It could be in a similar way Lamar Jackson was used in Baltimore before becoming the starter. The Ravens' offensive coordinator that season was Marty Mornhinweg, who is now a consultant for Philly. And according to Peterson, Mornhinweg feels very similar to Jalen as he did Lamar. So Shannon, can you see the Eagles using Jalen Hurts in a similar way that Baltimore used Lamar Jackson his rookie season?
Skip, gets more confusing for me by the moment. Now, Lamar Jackson, Ozzie Newsome, his last year's general manager, Skip, traded back into the first round to select Lamar Jackson with the 32nd overall pick. Now, in his first 9 games, he had about a little less than 10 snaps a game. He threw the ball 11 total times in those 9 games. He ran it for an average of 3 times per game. But here's where the difference is, Skip. Wentz and Flacco aren't the same. Flacco was 33 years of age, Skip. He had the 22nd ranked QBR in 2017, 19th in 2016, 25th in 2015. He was going off a cliff. Carson Wentz is 27. You just gave him $100+ million, and he got you in the playoffs when everybody around him, he got you to the playoff basically with practice squad players playing wide receiver and a patchwork offensive line. This is not a similar situation. Now, you can try and make it like that because Marty was there and they did implement a style, but until Greg Roman came in and took it over and then revamped it and made it basically Lamar Jackson eccentric. But Skip, this seems like a very, very different situation to me. Now, I get it, trying to find ways to get him on the field, but they were trying to find ways because they were going to replace Joe Flacco with Lamar Jackson. Is that what you're saying? That you're looking to replace Carson Wentz with Jalen Hurts? This is becoming more and more confusing to me, Skip, and I believe they created a situation that they did not need to create.
I agree with every point you just made. I've told you before, since I was a little kid, I've hated the Philadelphia Eagles. I love Jalen Hurts. I hate it that Jalen Hurts got drafted by the Eagles into this predicament of a situation. I hate it for both quarterbacks. I believe that as we speak, somewhere Carson Wentz is grinding his teeth over these latest remarks that came out yesterday from his head coach, Doug Peterson. I believe that Jalen Hurts is rolling his eyes over these latest remarks because I told you before the draft, Jalen Hurts is fully capable of being a starting quarterback for a playoff team in the National Football League. That's how much I believe in his arm and his legs and his leadership intangibles, his killer will. He's got one. And I've also told you from the start, as much as you love walk it to him Wentz, I like him, I respect him, but I've never been completely sold on him because I'm just not sure about his poise, his command, his consistent accuracy, and his leadership intangibles. So all of a sudden, you're telling me that the same Marty Mornhinweg, who is now your key advisor to your offense, gave you the same pre-draft input on Jalen that he was giving Ozzie on Lamar before the draft that you just talked about, that Ozzie Newsome traded up to snatch Lamar. Okay, so it was Marty as the coordinator in Baltimore who implemented that system that got rookie Lamar Jackson 10 snaps a game. That's what he averaged. 9 game. They were already starting to be done with Flacco. And again, he's the weirdest quarterback in the history of the National Football League. He has all-time great, does Joe Flacco, postseason stats. He won a Super Bowl. He won MVP. Can't take it away. But to your point, as I used to call him during the regular season, he was fluko because all the playoff stuff seemed like fluke-ish when it came to trying to get you back to the playoffs in the regular season. So now are you telling me that they're going to use Jalen the same way? So it'll start out with 10 snaps, 10 snaps, 10 snaps. Are you telling me that Carson Wentz is now a candidate to get Flacco'd? Are you trying to tell me that you don't quite believe in him to the point that you're going to give Jalen a chance 2/3 of the way through the year to maybe beat him out? And Shannon, I remind you what Donovan McNabb said a couple of weeks back, and he should know. He was a longtime star quarterback for the Eagles. He said this is so unfair to Carson Wentz because, as I'm paraphrasing the way Donovan said it, but he said, Philly fans, Jalen's going to go in and make a play here, make a play there, and they're going to start rooting for Jalen. They always root for the backup quarterback in any city, but especially in Philadelphia. And if Carson throws a pick here, or as we know he's wont to do, loses a sack fumble here or there, all of a sudden they're going to say, we want to see some more Jalen Hurts. Give us Hurts, give us Hurts, give us more Hurts. And it's going to be damaging to Carson Wentz's psyche. He still hasn't proven anything because, Shannon, as we talked about, he lasted, like 2 series against Seattle in his first ever playoff game last year. What did he do? Go 1 for 3 for 4 yards? So he's got 1 completion to his name in the postseason. And now he's got a second-round pick who had sensational stats, the 3rd best QBR last year to obviously Tua and Burrow, and scored 52 total touchdowns for Oklahoma and beat Baylor on the road and then beat Baylor in the championship game. How Matt Rule got a job off that, I don't know. That's a story for another day. But again, Jalen Hurts led them to the game against LSU in which Joe Burrow just annihilated my Sooners. But Jalen Hurts can play. They know he can play, and they're going to try to weave him into the flow the way Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill played 23% of the snaps last year in New Orleans. That's a lot. 23% of the quarterback snaps. He's in the game. Well, you know why that is? Because clearly Drew Brees is on the way out. I'm pretty sure this is going to be Drew's last year. I don't know that for a fact, but it feels like it. Sean Payton sort of let the cat out of the bag a month or so ago when he let that slip that it would be Drew's last season. But we just talked about those Pro Football Focus deep throws of the rankings. Drew Brees is 22nd. It's now like he has to get a running start and wind up to throw a deep ball. So it's clear that they're getting, they're going more and more to the playmaker, Taysom Hill, at quarterback. And yet now Jameis is the backup, just as the way Teddy Bridgewater. So when it's time to replace the starting quarterback, Sean Payton still goes to Jameis, as he went to Bridgewater last year for those games.
Right.
But to spark it, to make plays, to create splash plays, you want Taysom Hill, and now Doug Peterson wants Jalen Hurts. Very different situation. And I told you, it's making me feel sorry for both quarterbacks, especially Carson Wentz. This is not fair to him, and it does not bode well for him this year. The pressure is going to be times 10 on him to try to overcome that specter on the sideline that is going to be Jalen Hurts.
And that's the thing, Skip, because you've heard me say this from the time that we talked about it after we found out they were taking him. I said they created a situation they didn't even have to have. Now, we get it. Now, I don't like the fact that Green Bay took a quarterback, but Aaron Rodgers is 36 years of age. Carson Wentz is 27. 27. And you just gave him $108 million. So this makes no sense. And Skip, you laid it very out. If you look at Joe Flacco playoff numbers and not put his name up there, just look at his playoff numbers, you say this is a top 5 quarterback. And then you juxtapose that with his regular season number, you say this guy garbage. How the hell he stay in the league for 12, 13 years? He's a night and day quarterback. In the playoffs, he's unbelievable. In the regular season, he's average at best. But Carson Wentz, you take a quarterback that's 27, that's coming off to do what he did. He got you into the playoffs, Skip, and we know all the injuries that he had to deal with receivers in his offensive line. And you say, well, we're in the business of developing quarterbacks. No, you're not. You develop a quarterback that's on your roster that's going to lead you into the future. You don't develop a quarterback, pay him $100+ million, and then get another quarterback and say, yeah, we're going to develop him too. Nobody does that.
Okay.
The Cowboys didn't draft the left. Go ahead, Skip. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So just quickly, to your point and credit, I gave it up to you at the end of the year. Carson Wentz played very well down the stretch. He lost most of his starting receivers, obviously. He's thrown a bunch of backups. I did like the spunk and spark of all the backups. But they got on a little late season roll, albeit in 2 games against the Giants, 1 against the Redskins. But he did it. He got them there. He beat Dak Prescott head to head. I give you that. And then that quote that Jenny read, where Doug Peterson is acknowledging publicly that Marty Mornhinweg saw the same thing in Jalen Hurts that he saw in Lamar. That's a horrifying quote for Carson Wentz.
Right.
Because that says we're going to fast-track Jalen just the way they fast-track Lamar. Again, Jalen doesn't do exactly what... Jalen's not nearly as quick or fast as Lamar, but Jalen ran 4.5, which shocked me because he runs he glides. He's kind of effortless. But hey, he can play. And here we go.
No mercy.
Time for our hot topic of the day, sponsored by Burger King. 8 spicy chicken nuggets for just $1. Horace Grant refuted Michael Jordan's claim that he was the locker room source for Sam Smith's famous book, The Jordan Rules. Horace went on to say that if anyone was a snitch, it was Jordan for calling out former teammates for doing hard drugs and partying in his early days in Chicago. Skip, this is getting worse and worse. Whose side are you on here?
Yep. Jenny, this is a tough one because I've always liked Horace Grant. Many of the points he's making about this so-called documentary are dead on point. But in the end, I'm still on Michael Jordan's side because he is who he always was. Many of the things Shannon doesn't like about Michael Jordan, I love about him because they're all who he is and has been and why he is and has been. Yes, Horace. Yes, Shannon. He holds grudges to a fault. Yes, he carries out vendettas. Yes, he used his Hall of Fame induction speech to get even with and call out every last person who ever crossed him or doubted him. Yes, 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 he did all that. That's why he was psycho-driven to go 6 for 6 in NBA Finals. That's why he drove his teammates relentlessly, mercilessly to try to live up to his greatness when it came playoff time. It's why he tried to toughen all of them up, including Horace Grant. And yet, I can't hold it against Michael because it's just the Michael I knew in 1998 in Chicago. Nothing has changed. Did he hold a grudge against Horace for the book by Sam Smith, The Jordan Rules? Yes. Did he unfairly call out Horace in The Last Dance for being the snitch, the ultimate source for Sam Smith in The Jordan Rules? Yes, he did. Out of bounds, Michael. A lot of people contributed to that book. Assistant coaches, Phil Jackson, Jerry Reinsdorf, any other number of players. Was Horace a primary source for that book? I believe he was, because Sam went so far as to, in his acknowledgments at the end of the book, to credit Horace Grant for being so, I forget how it was worded, but for helping so much in the input into the book, for always being there and being accessible for the writers, including and especially Sam Smith. That was the tip-off, I believe, for Michael Jordan that, most of it came from Horace. So was Michael going to, quote unquote, get even with Horace? Yeah, I think he wanted to call him out. They did interview Horace, but Horace has told Shannon, yeah, but a lot of my answers or a lot of the negatives that I told the producers in my interview got cut out. They got left on the cutting room floor. I don't doubt that at all. This is Michael Jordan you're dealing with, and this was his baby. It took 22 years for him to decide, okay, I'm going to release all this footage. He owned the rights to all that practice footage, and I'm going to unleash it my way. I'm going to sign off. I'm going to have final say on every last glimpse that you see in those 10 hours of television. So everything Horace says is correct, but in the end, I don't think he's going to win this battle. Again, Shannon, he's wanted to come on Undisputed. We need to get back in the studio so he can join us. We're happy to do that, and I would welcome hearing more, because I'm sure there's more to the story than he's even told Chicago radio so far, and told you on the phone, that some of which you couldn't even talk about. But in the end, I'm still going to side with my guy, Michael Jordan, even though I acknowledge everything Horace said, and I don't believe he was completely out of line in anything that he said.
And Skip, I think the thing is, for me, is that I'm a firm believer it's never too late to set the record straight. And I believe that Horace wanted to set the record straight because Skip, like you said, there are a lot of people that didn't know about this book, just like there's a lot of people that weren't of age to remember Michael Jordan playing. And so now they get an opportunity to see some of the things that he did early on. It's like, but they also remember, Horace Grant. Horace Grant was the snitch. He's the one that told Sam Smith all that stuff. And he was like, well, wait a minute. I thought we were done with that. I didn't think that we were going to paint any of our teammates in a negative light. Yes, okay, maybe you rolled some of them to try to get them to rise to the level of play that you thought they could get to. But when you said, Horace Grant was a snitch, like, Skip, that man's going to refute that. He's not going to let you take a shot, even in the documentary. Although, like he said, there are a lot of things that were said, not just by me, but by others, that if it wasn't heaping praise on Michael, it got cut out. And that's why Skip on the show, he kept calling it the so-called documentary. And if you notice, Skip, documentaries, everything's out. you don't get to have say on what gets in and what gets out. Because more times than not, you're going to let all the good get in and you're going to keep a lot of the bad out. So that's why when people do how do they say it, Skip? It's like the unauthorized autobiography, or the unauthorized documentary of such and such's life. Because if we can let you have some say, more times than not, it's going to be all positive, and we know nobody's life is all positive. So Horace he definitely wanted to get out that, yes, Mike did do that, said, no, don't feed him. But I just want everybody to know, Sharp, I said, F you, and I stepped towards him, and he didn't move because he wasn't really trying to do anything like that. So for me, Skip, I just think that Horace wanted to set the record straight. He does not want to be viewed as a snitch. I mean, I guess in some circles, snitching is viewed as okay. If you're in that lifestyle, okay, fine, I get it. All of that, I'm not here to refute somebody snitching or trying to save themselves. You do what you want. But if I feel that you're calling me out and I didn't do that, well, Skip, I have no choice but to refute that. And I think this was Horace's opportunity to refute what he believed Michael was saying, which is damaging. Because Skip, no athlete wants to be labeled as a snitch. Oh, you the one that was giving up information. You the one that was telling the media, yada, 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 what happened in the locker room, what happened in meeting room. And nobody wants that title. And Horace wanted to set the record straight. So I'm with Horace. Look, I'm going to defend my name. I'm going to defend myself. But like you said, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, month, we can get back in the studio and we can have guests. And we'd love to have Horace on.
Okay. By the way, you're referring to what's called an unauthorized biography, where somebody writes about a subject without the subject's permission, where the subject doesn't have any input or editorial control over the ultimate product that goes into the book. In this, what this is the equivalent of an autobiography where it's you through your eyes in your words. That's all this was. Now, Shannon, just for the record, I was pleasantly surprised at the objectivity that Jordan did allow. They did deal with all the gambling. Now, their conclusion wasn't exactly our conclusion. I think it did play a role in his hiatus that I believe he was forced to take to go play baseball. But at least they dealt with it, and they dealt with all the, what you consider bullying, what I consider just all-time greatest leadership / motivation in the way he rode his teammates in practice and on team planes. So at least Michael signed off on all that to the point, remember the quote from him going into the episode 1 was, I'm afraid people are going to think I'm a horrible person. Well, maybe some people do. I never did, but I already knew all this from the year that I covered the Last Dance Bulls. With him. So in the end, this is what I believe set off Horace even more than the snitching accusation was that after maybe the first couple of episodes, Sam Smith, the author of the Jordan Rules, did a radio interview in San Francisco in which he brought up the episode that on the team plane flying back home after a loss, Jordan told the flight attendant, no, Horace doesn't eat tonight on the plane. You know, don't give him any food. Well, that's all that Sam told. Yeah, like he played so poorly that he doesn't get to eat on the flight home. Okay, so Horace is saying, here's what happened to me in this social media age. I believe that Horace went on his own social media, and I don't know, he saw 6 or 8 people saying, Horace, you let him do that to you? No man should ever let any other man do that to him. And Horace is a proud man. And as you pointed out earlier, he's from rural Georgia, where you're from. And you don't take food off a man's table. So he says the rest of the story, untold, is that he stepped right back to Michael and said, you want to do it right here? And he claims that Michael said no. And he didn't say anything. He quit barking, as Horace said. Well, if I know Michael, if he had been shown on an iPad Horace saying that, or even the audio of Horace saying that on Chicago radio, I believe Michael would have thrown his head back and laughed like he did about Gary Payton saying, I shut him down in the 97 finals. So the point is, I'd like to hear Michael's side of that story now, because I don't think Michael would have backed down from Horace either. Horace was 6'10", 215, 220. Michael was 6'6", 215, 220, somewhere in that range. Maybe earlier he was more like 205-ish, maybe in those first three championship runs. But I don't believe Michael would have backed down, and I don't believe Horace would have. And thankfully, it didn't come to an all-out duke it out on the team plane. But now it's gone over the edge into Horace is saying he'd fight him right now. If he wants to fight, if that's the way you want to settle it, let's fight right now. No, you don't need to fight right now. You know, Michael's 57 years of age. He's let himself, but Michael's let himself go a little bit. Too many cigars, too much of you know what. And I don't want to hear that anymore, especially from a Horace Grant who now works for the NBA as an ambassador. He travels the world, pre-pandemic, obviously, to promote the Bulls and the NBA. Jerry Reinsdorf signed off on this. So I don't want to hear this from him, and I don't want to hear Horace jeopardize his job as a global ambassador, because it's not a good look for anybody.
Skip, let me tell you something. Let me tell you how it works in our community. There are three things that we don't play with: money, food, our woman. Keep those things out your mouth. We don't play with that. I don't play. Skip, they were saying there was a couple of times that Michael didn't want anybody to have the pizza. Now, this was reported that Michael spit on the pizza. That was the reason he was the only one that ate it. Now, there was another story that was reported that there were some cinnamon rolls at one point in time, and Michael didn't want to share, so he spit on those also. But you don't play with food, you don't play with money, and you don't play with a woman in our community. Now, I don't know how anybody else, I can't speak to anybody else's community. I'm telling you how it works in ours. Don't play with somebody's food. You know, because it used to be, you touch somebody's food. Oh, you want that? Skip, I've seen a lot of fights happen. Somebody touch somebody's food, or some people get killed, $1, $2, and definitely a woman. So leave that alone. And when Horace Grant is like, Skip, I've gotten so many DMs on Twitter from athletes, on IG, on call. Like, man, who Michael think he is? Man, Sharp, you know good well ain't nobody gonna go for that. I'm sure Horace wasn't the only one that stood up to Michael in that situation. Nah, that wasn't gonna fly. So many, Skip. But the thing that Horace wanted to get, because Skip, I mean, it was portrayed that if he did this and he didn't say anything, he didn't do anything, man, that Horace is weak. Man, Horace grew up in Middle Georgia, Sparta, which is about 2 hours from where I grew up in rural South Georgia. So Horace like, Sharp, man, you know I wasn't gonna let that fly.
Okay. I got it. And quickly, for the record, the community I grew up in, I think messing with woman goes to the top of the list, just for the record. Just for those. I think people would understand. Could be money. I don't know. I think the woman goes to the top. But look, in the end, I can't condemn. Look, all these things that you don't like about Michael, I loved about Michael. It's like you said, everybody's dug in on you love LeBron, you love Michael. These are all the reasons that I believe Michael was so successful. Very flawed, but they all came out as positive flaws, because he pulled, as he said in episode 1, I pulled everybody along with me. And it wasn't always pretty, but in the end, I just can't argue with 6-0 in the finals. I'm sorry, something worked. Nobody mutinied on him. Nobody rebelled against him to the point that they wanted to quit. They all sat for the quote-unquote so-called documentary. They all spoke. They still speak highly of him. In the end, it worked out. Horace is the one guy whose pride has been rubbed rawest by this. And I hate that for Horace's sake. And I welcome the day, maybe soon, that we can have Horace on the show.
Yep. So do I, Skip.
Hope that can happen. Hope that can happen. Horace, you know, whether or not he's upset, MJ probably not losing too much sleep over it as he looks down at all those rings. I don't know if MJ's bothered by it. Dolphins receiver DeVante Parker said on an NFL on Fox Instagram poll that making a catch against Patriots corner Stephon Gilmore would be harder than breaking up a pass while guarding Saints receiver Michael Thomas. Thomas took offense to this, saying he has lapped Parker since entering the league. The two name-called back and forth, with Thomas finally saying Parker, quote, couldn't even get a seat at the table. So, Shannon, whose side are you on here?
Skip, I'm going to have to go with Parker. I really don't know why Michael Thomas got so upset. I mean, the question wasn't who's the better receiver. Nobody asked that. That wasn't a question. He says, which is tougher, catching a pass on Stephon Gilmore or breaking up a pass against Michael Thomas? Skip, for a receiver, obviously, what do you think the receiver's going to say? I'm sure DB would have said the opposite. If the DB would say, yeah, we'll break it. I mean, as many passes they're going to throw towards Michael Thomas, I mean, you're trying to break up, yeah, it's going to be tough. I don't get why Michael Thomas got so upset. Skip, the question wasn't who's the better receiver. And what was Parker supposed to say? He's a competitor like you, Michael. He believed that it was tougher for him to do what he did against Stephon Gilmore. Remember, Skip, there have not been a whole lot of DBs to win Defensive Player of the Year at the corner position. Rod Woodson won it. Deion Sanders won it. Mel Blount won it. But I'm saying, Skip, in the last 30 years, those are the only two defensive backs, I'm talking about cornerbacks, that have won Defensive Player of the Year. That's a huge accomplishment. And he lit him up. He did something nobody else did in the regular season last year. He did a number on Stephon Gilmore. He's entitled to have a bad game because he had been on the road for the last 2 years. Whoo, he was doing a number on wide receivers. Skip, but I don't see what Michael Thomas is getting upset about. No one said, Parker, is it the equivalent receiver you are? They were just asking a question. We posed a question. He answered it. What was he supposed to say as a wide receiver? Man, I think breaking up a pass against Michael Thomas tougher than catching a pass on Stephon Gilmore. Man, stop. Man, y'all real sensitive out there these days, Skip.
I am so with you on this one. But now I'm going to talk about the why this happened. It's funny, Shannon, but if Michael Thomas walked up here in my loft right now and jumped in my lap the way our little Maltese Hazel did late in the show yesterday, if Michael Thomas jumped in my lap, I wouldn't know who he was. I don't know his face. He was the Offensive Player of the Year in the National Football League last year. He set the all-time record for catches in a season last year, and I don't know his face. I don't really know that much about him, except that I certainly respect him as a player. When I do watch New Orleans games, he doesn't jump off my screen. He's not spectacular to watch. He doesn't make that many. I've seen a couple on Twitter, some highlights, but again, he doesn't regularly make catches that make me say, wow, I can't believe that. He's a student of the game. He runs great routes. He gets open. He did not time fast at the combine, which is why he fell to the second round. He's like up in the 4.6 range. I think it's 4.55. DeVante Parker is a little bigger and was a second faster at the combine, which is why he was drafted he was the 14th overall pick by the Dolphins. So the point is that all I know about Michael Thomas is what I know from Twitter or Instagram. He's become a social troll, that he's always trying to pick fights on Twitter. He's always trying to fuel feuds on Twitter that are just kind of senseless to me. Like even this choice of the poll, this or that. It's not a real provocative question, and obviously it's an obvious answer for a receiver, especially one who twice a year each year has to go up against that guy, Stephon Gilmore. Yes. Well, obviously you'd pick that. There's nothing wrong with that. And then for Michael Thomas to conclude you don't even deserve a seat at the table, yeah, he does. I'm sorry, Michael, he does. He had a terrific year last year for a not very good football team. You realize DeVante Parker had career highs across the board in catches and yards and touchdowns, and 13 of those games were started by Ryan Fitzpatrick, and 3 more of those games were started by Josh Rosen. So, again, he didn't have Drew Brees throwing him pass after pass. And, Shannon, here's another big point. Michael Thomas had the luxury of having by far, the most balls thrown to him in the whole league.
Oh, yeah.
He led the league with 185 targets last year. That's 28 more than Julio got, number 2. And that was 57 more than DeVante got thrown to him by the 2 Dolphins quarterbacks, which ranked completely way down at 17th on the list of targets. Well, yeah, if you took DeVante Parker at 6'3", 216, and you put him in Drew Brees' offense right here, right now, going into next year, and you threw him 185 balls, I think he'd do really well. I really do, because I like him. If I'm rooting against him, I'm afraid of DeVante Parker. He's really good. Is he as good as Michael? No, not quite, but he has earned a seat at the table. And I feel like I know more about him than I know about Michael Thomas.
Skip, if I were to ask an offensive lineman, which is hard, blocking LT or running a route on Deion Sanders, what the hell you think the offensive lineman going to say, Skip? So you ask a receiver, which is tougher, running. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Nobody said Deion isn't any good. Man, just saying you're asking a player that has to face a player more times than that. The likelihood of Parker is hoping he doesn't have to break up a pass against Michael Thomas. That's what he's hoping. So I don't get the frustration. If somebody would have said who's better, Julio or Michael Thomas, okay, Michael Thomas, you want to say, well, look at my numbers, look at the yards, you look at the catches, yada, yada, yada. Okay, I give you that argument. I personally, Skip, you know where I'm on this. I think Julio's the best receiver in the game. But I'm not going to fight Michael Thomas on that. If he wants to get upset about something like that, I get it. But you're asking a receiver who's having to go against the premier corner in the league and do what he did, as opposed to asking DB to break up a pass. I don't get what I looked at it, I'm like, well, where's the slight? Where is the slight in what DeVante Parker said? And I didn't see it, and I still don't see it.
Shannon, Stephon Gilmore made Amari Cooper quit last year. Amari waved out of the game, checked out, stood on the sideline pouting because he couldn't get open. He did not catch a ball as Dallas lost close game at New England last year. So in the end, let me sum it up with this. If Tua is as good as you say Tua is, and if he does start from the start, or at least from the 3rd or 4th game next year, watch what starts happening with DeVante Parker with a big-time quarterback. And by the way, if this is Drew Brees last year in New Orleans, and let's say for sake of argument that Jameis is the quarterback a year from now, let's see what starts happening to Michael Thomas with Jameis. Maybe it won't be quite as great as it was with Drew Brees.
Yeah, Skip, I agree. I mean, we don't know. I mean, when you play with an all-time great quarterback and your numbers are skewed, we'll see what they look like if Taysom Hill or Jameis is the quarterback. We'll see if he averages 110, 112 catches a season.
Yeah.
No mercy.
NASCAR is back. Tonight we finish up at Darlington with the Toyota 500 live in prime time and only on FS1. And Sunday we're back on Fox for the Coca-Cola 600 live from Charlotte. Looking forward to it. So, Pro Football Focus, guys, ranked Kyler Murray as the league's 6th best deep passer last season, even despite having little help at receiver, according to Pro Football Focus. Murray also only had 2 turnover-worthy deep ball throws out of 62 attempts. So, Shannon, are you surprised by this?
I am, Skip, and I'll be the first to say this, Skip. He played better in his rookie season than I thought he would. I thought he would struggle a little more than he did, and I thought he played well. He was Rookie of the Year, although I had Josh Jacobs winning that award, but to give him kudos, to give him credit. But Skip, and I'm going to be the first to admit, it's not like I'm tuning in and watching every single play of Arizona Cardinals games. But the games that I did watch, I didn't see a whole lot of deep plays. And as Jenny was mentioning in the read, it's not like he had a whole lot of receivers that was getting down the field. Now, D-Hop will definitely make his life easier, although D-Hop is not deep threat, Skip. He's an intermediate guy that's going to catch everything in his area code. Christian Kirk is more of the speed guy that can get down the field in a hurry. And we know with Larry Fitzgerald, he's not the Larry Fitzgerald in his first 10 years, but he's still going to catch everything you throw to him, and he can still move the sticks. And they drafted an offensive lineman, Skip, that a lot of people thought would go earlier than what he did to add protection. So I think he will even be better than what he was last year, Skip. But I am surprised that he was as high as he was as far as throwing the ball deep, because I don't remember a whole lot of deep plays that stick out in my mind that he completed last year.
Shannon Sharp, I'm going to go on record right here, right now, and I'm going to tell you Kyler Murray is about to make a quantum leap in his second year, a Mahomesian, Lamar-esque quantum leap in year
MVP?
2.
Okay.
And he's
5 cases MVP.
No, I don't know. I don't know about MVP. No, I just say Kyler's team is going to be a wild card team. I wouldn't be shocked if Kyler's team wins the West this year, because I find their schedule eminently easy. And I don't want to waste your time going all the way down the schedule, but trust me, if they get hot like I think they might, they could win 11 or 12 games. I'm not going to predict that, but I say they could win 10 and win the wild card, at least be the second best team in the division and go to the playoffs in Kyler's second year. I wasn't surprised by 6th best deep passing stats, or by what Jenny just read, only 2 turnover-worthy throws in 62 deep passes. It's what he did for my Oklahoma Sooners. This little man has a big arm. I told you, this is a special little athlete who has a supreme self-confidence that manifests itself in almost an athletic arrogance that he plays with, a poise, a pride, a quiet self-belief that is captivating and contagious. And I believe you're going to see it really start to pay dividends now that he actually has a bona fide top 5 receiver he can rely on. Larry Fitz, we all know, is starting to get to the end of the line. I'm a little surprised he's going to come back again. And then I look down the rest. I like Christian Kirk, and I really liked Andy Isabella coming out in the draft. And I don't know what happened. He only caught 9 balls last year. He was their 2nd-round pick a year ago out of UMass. He ran 4.3 at the combine. I say they'll get him more involved this year, and that will help open up this offense. So in the end, with Kenyon Drake, you can hand it to him or flip it to him. He can really catch it and run with it. I love what they're going to be able to do in year 2 with Kyler, because I kept defending Kyler's year 1. He tied the Lions on opening day. That's pretty great, given what Arizona, they were the worst team the year before. And then he beat Atlanta, and he won at the Giants. These are impressive. He beat the Browns at home, and then he won at the Seahawks. Twice last year, he gave the 49ers all they wanted, 2 close games. He gave the Ravens all they wanted in a narrow loss at Baltimore. So you look at the body of work from last year, he was 16th in the league in QBR, in the middle of the pack. That's pretty good for a rookie. And if you look at catchable passes, Pro Football Focus says he ranked 10th. And that's above Russell Wilson and Deshaun and Baker and Mahomes and Drew Brees and Lamar. He threw more catchable passes. In air distance, he was 11th last year, so there was no dinking and dunking from little Kyler, who a lot of people thought was just too little to play pro football. He threw more deep passes than Mahomes did or Deshaun did. So I loved what I saw under Cliff Kingsbury last year. And then I jumped out of my chair when, with the 8th overall pick, they took the guy I liked the best on defense, Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. That's the guy who kept leaping off my TV when I watched the Clemson Tigers play. I saw more flash from Isaiah Simmons than I saw from Chase Young. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if Isaiah is going to have more early impact than even Chase Young does. And you mentioned Josh Jones. Mel Kiper believed they stole him in the third round as a plug-and-play offensive starter at tackle. So that'll work. That'll help shore up the protection. Well, I want to see Kyler run with it more because he's just a little lightning bug. He is hard to get on the ground, and he never seems to take a tough shot. Yeah.
I'm going to need you to do something for me. Now, you just said, before you got through all that little spiel of yours, you said the Cardinals could win 10 or 11 games, but you're not going to predict it. Like you tell me, I'm going to need you to have the courage of your conviction. Are they going to win 10 or 11 games? Yes or no? Or are you willing to put due on it?
10 games, I said. I'm not going to go to 11 or 12, even though I could see them winning 11 or 12 when I look at the schedule. I'll go 10.
Can I get some due?
But again...
Can I get some due?
Well, sure. Yeah, well, what do I get back if I win? The odds on that should be like 20-1 that they would win 10 games. Nobody expects them to win 10. So I'll bet you one case to 20 that they win 10 games.
No.
Will you take that?
No. Skip.
Will you put your due where your mouth is?
You Skip, we have hood bets. We don't do the odds. We don't do no odds. We bet in the hood. You take that team straight up. That's how we do it, Skip. You know how we do. We bet win, loss. That's what we do. Now all of a sudden, see, that's how you got to that 30-plus case lead on me, by me giving you odds. I'm not giving you any odds. You got 10. You got 10 wins. We got 2 cases. They don't win 10 games.
Who is out on the limb I'm out on right now? 10 games for Kyler Murray. Who's out there? Me, by myself.
That's me.
I'll give you.
You out there on the limb?
I'll give you a break. I'll give you 10-1 odds. I'll cut them in half. I'll do 10 cases versus 1 case on 10 wins.
Nope.
That's a sucker deal. Come on, take it, Shannon.
No, yeah, it is. It is. If I were to take this deal, it'll be a sucker.
No.
But you're right. You're on the limb by yourself. But I'm up in that tree behind you. I'm sawing. I'm gonna saw that limb right on off when you talk about 10 wins, because that's what's happening.
No mercy.
Despite missing 5 games last season, Drew Brees still had the 7th most passing touchdowns in the league. But according to Pro Football Focus, Brees ranked only 22nd in deep passes. 22nd. Shannon, how do you explain this?
Because that's not what they ask him to do anymore, Skip. Michael Thomas doesn't catch a whole lot of deep balls. He catches a lot of underneath, intermediate throws, and Drew Brees has plenty arm to do that. Their real only deep threat was Ted Ginn Jr., and he was nicked a large part of the last season. So I'm not surprised he's as down as far as deep balls as he is on this list, Skip, because that's not what Drew Brees does anymore. They're not pushing the ball down the field. They get those shot plays, Skip. You know, sometimes they'll catch you with a fake reverse, and all of a sudden they heave it over your head. Or Taysom Hill will throw a deep pass, but that's not their offense anymore. Drew Brees is not required to push the ball down the field like he once did.
Shannon, to me, it's gotten a little painful to watch Drew try to wind up and throw a deep ball. He has obviously lost some arm strength, and I remind everybody, he's a year and a half younger than Tom Brady. Now it looks like he has to throw deep balls the way you throw a javelin, where you have to get a little bit of a running start and throw everything into it to get it down the field.
Javelin throw.
And I got to tell you, in that home playoff loss to Jenny's Vikings, Drew Brees looked a little bit more like Drew Bledsoe used to look pre-Brady in big games, which is why Belichick traded Drew Bledsoe within the division to the Bills. He just couldn't live up. And that looked like a fading, aging Drew Brees at the end of the year last year, which is why, in the end, I'm going to pick Tom Brady's team to win that division over Drew Brees' team, even though the Saints are loaded. I still say at quarterback, Brady will be better this year than Drew Brees.
But yeah, Skip, that might be true. But, you know, they don't ask him to throw the ball down the field. He doesn't push the ball down the field nearly as much as he once did. Everything is intermediate. That's why Michael Thomas is catching 140 balls, 130 balls on the season. Not very many of them are deep, but he's throwing. That's why Drew's completion percentage is so high. You're not going to have that high completion percentage, Skip, with pushing the ball down the field.
Thank you for bringing up that Vikings win, Skip. That got me excited for football. That's it for Undisputed. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Have a good day, guys.